Hey all, welcome back. So if you have any alternator charging issues in any of your 70s, mid to late 70s, possibly even early 70s, so we're going to cover a little bit in this video. This could also work on a lot of different Fords and Mercuries and whatnot of this same era, going into even into the 80s and stuff. So probably even in the early 90s, if I'm not mistaken. But anyways, first thing I'll say is, this car doesn't have any sort of a gauge that doesn't read amps, doesn't read volts. All it has is just a light on the dash that says alt, and the only thing that does is it comes on when the thing's not charging enough. And so what was going on with this car was the first time I noticed anything was going on, I'd been driving it, quite a bit, and I did notice that when I left home, that every time I would come up to a stop and go sign, as soon as the engine got down to idle, the alt light would come on, and as soon as I accelerated, it'd go off. I did that a few times, and then on my way into to work, here at my shop, by that time it wasn't, it was back to normal. Like it would idle and everything seemed to be was charging at like 13 volts or something like that. I'd like a little bit more, but anyways, so it's not really anything to troubleshoot in a situation like that. So I didn't really do anything with it, and then all of a sudden I got to driving it, day or two so later, and I noticed that that the turn signals were flashing faster, and then I'd start slowing down to to make a turn or do whatever, and as soon as I'd slow down, the engine get closer to idle, the turn signals start flashing normal what they were. Then I started noticing that the fan speed for the heater, and also the headlights, would go dim as I was going up. And so the next day I brought it with me back here to the shop and started up, and it was probably at like 12.7 it was running, and as soon as I turned on like the headlights, turned on the deals like that, the alternator just went into full field. I mean, it was charging up to like almost 19 volts, and so eventually it basically burned the alternator out. It was getting extremely hot, and it's time to replace it. But there's one other thing that's on these older cars that we'll go ahead and we'll go over and we'll talk about. So these cars in this time have what they call an external voltage regulator, which is what it does all the controls. It basically senses the voltage, and it keeps it going where it's supposed to. And that's pretty much what's not going on with this thing. But one other thing that I did realize on this thing when I did, I just got done replacing this alternator. I didn't film that because I don't know, it's pretty easy to just swap in and replace an alternator on something. But I did notice that you might be able to see it. See the sparks going? That's not what you're supposed to have going on when you go to hook up that's negative battery lead. So what I do is I hook a test light to that negative battery lead right there. See, the test light lights up. That's what we don't want to have happen. Come on, stay in there. And then what I do is, when you're going to try to figure out, when you got a problem like this, what you need to do is just start disconnecting things. And when I started right here, and this is your solenoid for your starter and all that, and about your leads coming from your alternator are going right up here, because that's where they're landing on, is this post right here, and then in turn going into your battery. So can see that the light's out now. Back on. Okay, it's not that wire. So what we'll do is we'll put this wire back on. Okay, that's not it either. This wire right here is what's causing us to have this issue. And as soon as I put this new alternator in here, you know, I was pretty sure I was going to have a regulator problem, but I had to, since it actually burned that alternator up, I could smell it. You know, I went ahead and put it in there, and I did try it, and you know, no, it didn't want to charge much more than 12.7. And then when you turn lights on and stuff, it was keeping the battery up, but it just wasn't. It's not doing it, you know, as much as it's supposed to. But so it looks like, you know, and so with that wire off, you know, you can no more sparks. So figured out what, you know, needs to happen. Now this wire is what I believe is we'll look at a wiring diagram, but this goes straight over to the alternator. Okay, so this yellow wire is that yellow wire going into the regulator right there. The one that's a little bit down towards the bottom. This one is running up to that capacitor right there. It's the one that's below it. So it's not this one, it's that one that I don't have my hand on. It's right there by the horn. That's the wire going in there. Let's have a look-see at a schematic. So this is pretty much what we got going on here. This is kind of basic, but I'm pretty sure that this is, you know, it's very similar, but this is the basics of what's, you know, going on inside of there. And you know, the reason this is a lot different is a lot of alternators in vehicles and stuff, this is all done internally. Trying not to move so much here with the camera, sorry about that. So anyways, you got that green coming off there, hot in run. So when you turn the key on and the alternator's not charging, it allows to be able to turn on that instrument cluster charge lamp. And then once it starts charging, it takes away that circuit and turns that light off. But you need to have power going into it, and then you got power going into the regulator, and then you've got believe the regulator gets turned on and it comes out of the S terminals or the F terminal, and yeah, I believe that's what it does. That's the field. Your output after it, you know, gets through the rectifiers, that B plus kind of a, you know, reddish color goes through back to your battery, you know, because alternators, their point is they make AC current, and your regulator, it's going to basically regulate, and it's going to put more or less voltage into the field to make that charge more or less. And so that's what it's doing to you know, regulate and boost your voltage, but you're not really going to see it. It's supposed to do it fast enough that it's supposed to keep it at 13.5, no more than 14 volts, no matter what you have turned on. Now sometimes your voltage will drop just a little bit until your battery catches up some, depending on how much you have on it. You know, obviously if you're overloading it, you know, it's going to drop the voltage a little bit and take a little bit to come on, but most of the time it's supposed to be right in between 13 and 14 volts. I like it at 13.5 to 14, somewhere in there. And so, you know, in our case, you know, we've got something bad in the regulator that's keeping everything charged, you know, or keeping everything powered up when the vehicle's off. So what we're going to do is, first thing we do is pull this regulator out of here. Let me show you what the new one looks like. We're just going to use a Napa one. That's the part number there. This is it here. Nothing too sophisticated. There's a couple of 3/8 head bolts on either side there. Get that thing pulled off. Okay, so first thing we're going to do is we're just going to unplug this, and then I'm going to hook that wire back up, that one that we found earlier. That what you kind of do is just push on this like this, and this whole thing comes off just like that. So that's the first thing we're going to do. We're just going to let that go, and then I'm going to move this camera where that deal's in view also. Okay, it'll stay. Okay, so we got this hooked back. Or we need to put this wire back on too. We got all those put back on, and then we're going to go ahead and hook the test light up like we had it from the negative. Okay, so we've got no test light operating right now. Yeah, everything's on there tight. So I'm going to go ahead and tighten this screw down here. Now just see if we're still where we were at before. What should happen is I plug this old one back in, and that test light should light. There we go. As soon as I plug this thing in, test light lights back up. So plug in the new one. I wish I had this a little bit better where y'all could see it, but it's just these little tabs here. Kind of started in here. And you'll see the blades as they go through. Oh, come on. And with everything hooked up, we've got no test light lit up. So we'll get this thing mounted back in here. Okay, so we got that new regulator. I'll show the view of it. You know, it's a little hard to get your hands down in here, but if you need more room, just go ahead and pull the battery out. I managed to get it, but anyways, we got this thing all hooked back up, including this wire right here, which was the one that, you know, runs to that regulator and to the alternator, is, you know, by way of a, you know, fusible link. So now with everything hooked back up, we don't have the test light lit anymore, and that's what we want. And no spark. So that's good. The test light trick that we just did right here can work for, you know, if you have, you know, if your battery's just, you know, draining over a period of time, because you might have something that's stuck on, like a glove box light or a trunk light or something like that. You can use that trick to, you know, and you just start disconnecting wires. You start pulling fuses. You pull fuses and the test light goes out, and you know what circuit to look for. Figure out, you know, what it is. You pulled a circuit out for interior lights oh wow, the dome lights may be staying on, or something like that might be staying on. Could be any number of things. I've seen alternators themselves draw power away from the battery. In this case, you know, I did have to jump start this car today, which is the first time I had to jump start it ever since I've ever had it. And so pretty much this regulator just went kaput, and decided to just regulate whenever it decided it wanted to, and how much or however little it wanted to. So that's what we're going to go ahead and fire this thing up and see what the voltage is. Okay, we'll get this meter turned on, DC volts down here, and wedge that down inside of there. I still got to tighten that up yet. It'll be okay for the time being. And I hooked my battery up, or these up wrong. Not a huge deal, it would just read negative on the meter. Okay, so we are at 12.37 volts. We'll go fire it up. Okay, this is at a very low idle. I'm going to kick the idle up a little bit. Got it kicked up a little bit. That's pretty good. Yep, that's pretty good. What we'll go ahead and do now is we'll turn the headlights on, turn the heater on full blast, a few other things. That's pretty good. Get everything shut off here. And I suspect it'll probably be a little bit better. You know, this battery was drawn clear down because all I really did was jump start it and drove it into the shop here, and it really wasn't charging as good as it's supposed to. So that battery was was down a lot. So it'll probably get even better than that, but it's charging, it's regulating, it's doing what it's supposed to do. And so that'll bring up a point I want to bring up here right quick, so we'll get a different camera view. Anyways, just want to bring up the fact that, you know, since these cars don't have any gauges, you know, for amps or voltage or anything like that, even though your light gone out, that only had happened to me just one time, where I noticed that light was on at an idle, and then it, you know, but that problem went away. The next few times I drove it, it was fine. But what I was having then was a voltage that was too high. Now there's nothing in the car that's going to say, hey, this thing's, you know, voltage is too high, you know, get something looked at. So it's something you should, you know, probably check, you know, with a voltmeter periodically, just to make sure that, you know, it's not overcharging. Pay attention to your, you know, like where I was noticing the heater fan motor speed. As soon as I take off from a stop and go sign, you know, the fan would turn on faster, the headlights would get a little bit brighter, turn signals were flashing faster, because, you know, I was getting like 18 volts at one point when I measured it, and that's, you know, that's too much. Windows were rolling up, you know, way too fast, you know, and all that kind of stuff you could break certain things. And so keep a check at it, and keep looking at it, you know, with a voltmeter, and you know, make sure everything's working okay. Had I have caught this a lot sooner, may not have burned up my other alternator. So alternators aren't that expensive. I think the regulator's $25-30 ish. Alternator was 50 some odd dollars, so it's really not that bad. But if I'd have caught this sooner, I might have just had to replace the regulator instead of doing both of them. But here we are, wholly new setup, everything's good to go, and you know, hopefully you get yours figured out. Thanks for watching.